Hi, this is Rhonda Layfield, and the following demo is from my Windows 7 deployment training course. On the 2010 server is where we're going to create our scheduled task. The first thing we need to do is allow PowerShell scripts to be run on this server. By default, it's set to not allow PowerShell scripts to run as a security measurement. To allow PowerShell scripts to run, I'm going to launch the PowerShell command prompt. We'll click the Start button, All Programs, Accessories, Windows PowerShell, and then Windows PowerShell 64-bit. You'll notice that we're launching as an administrator. To allow scripts to run, I will set execution policy to remote signed. When prompted, yes, do you want to do this? Click Y and press Enter. We've now set the execution policy to allow PowerShell scripts to run on this machine. Next step is to go build that PowerShell script. This could not be easier. We'll close PowerShell command prompt. We're done with that now. Next, we'll open that Notepad document we saved earlier that has the PowerShell command in it. We open that. Let's tell it to save. And I'm going to put it on my C drive in a new folder named Tasks. I'll name it Replicate LDS. It's not a text document. The extension is going to be a .ps1 and change it from text to all files. That will become our PowerShell script. Click Save. And we'll close that guy. And now into Server Manager. Within Server Manager, expand Configuration and highlight Task Scheduler. If you right-click, we can choose to create a basic task, and that's what we're going to do. The name, Replicate LDS. Click Next. The trigger, well, when do you want this to start, and then how long do you want it to run? I'm going to tell it weekly. I want it to run once a week, every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. And I want it to synchronize across time zones just in case. Click Next. On the Action page, you can choose to start a program, which is what we're going to do, but you could also choose to send an email or display a message. You'll see after we've created this basic task sequence, you can open the properties and go back and set up as many emails and programs and messages as you like. For now, start a program and click Next. The program we want to start is PowerShell. So in the Program Script box, click the Browse button. And then we'll browse down to C, open Windows, System 32, cruise on down here to Windows PowerShell version 1, and select PowerShell.exe. Now the argument I mentioned that we had to add, you'll put in the argument box. Makes sense. So we'll click in that box and type dash, no logo, space, dash, command, open quote, ampersand, space, and then we'll do an open parenthesis, then C:\, tasks, replicate, LDS, .ps1. Close the parenthesis and close the quote. Then click Next. If everything looks good, go ahead and click Finish on the summary page. And you now have a new basic task. But where did it go? This always confused me when we first got into these. If you expand Task Scheduler and highlight the Task Scheduler library, you'll see that's where your basic task was stored. Now I want to show you some things you can do with this after you've created it. If you double-click, it'll open the properties. On the General tab, there are all kinds of settings. You can control your security options as to which user or group is allowed to run this task sequence. Do you want it to run only when a user is logged on, or whether a user is logged on or not? Run with the highest privileges. On the triggers page, you can tell it, okay, I told it to run every week, but I want it to do more than that. Now you can come in and change daily, weekly, monthly, when you want it to start. For advanced settings, you can delay the task up for a certain number of hours, repeat the task every certain number of hours, stop the task if it runs longer than a certain number. As you can see, the default is 3 days. You definitely want it to stop after that. Have the task expire so that it no longer runs after a certain date and time, and leave the task enabled. Click Cancel. On the actions, tell it New Action. This is where you can tell it to either start another program, send an email, or display a message, and you can set up as many of those as you'd like for your basic task sequences. The conditions: do you want to start the task only if the computer is idle for X number of minutes or hours? Stop if the computer ceases to be idle. Think about your laptops and battery power. For power, start the task only if the computer is on AC power. Stop if the computer switches to battery power. Wake the computer to run this task. And for network, start only if the following network connection is available. And then you would be able to choose your network connection. On settings, how do you want the behavior of the task to perform? Allow the task to be run on demand. Run task as soon as possible after a scheduled start is missed. If the task fails, restart every minute or up to a certain number of times. Stop the task if it runs longer than a certain number of days or hours. Stick with the defaults of 3 days. If the running task does not end when requested, force it to stop. If the task is not scheduled to run again, delete it after. Little housekeeping here. You can tell it when to delete the task. If the task is already running, then the following rule applies: do not start a new instance. Other options that we have: run a new instance in parallel, queue those instances and let them all run, or stop the existing instance, which would allow the new instance to run. We'll stick with the default there too. The last tab is the History tab, which will tell you when this basic task has run and whether it completed successfully or not. We'll click OK. And I want to show you another way that you can tell if your basic task has run properly and replicated that LDS folder. For that, we'll go over to the Windows 7 machine. And in the LDS folder, just look at the date modified stamp. Look at the date and time and find out, did your LDS get updated based on when you told it to be updated or not? That's really the quickest and easiest way to see if it has been updated recently.
Thanks for watching. For more information regarding our training videos, please visit www.trainsignal.com.